In October 2024, antique dealer Maria Santos was cataloging items from the estate sale of Eleanor Richmond, a prominent Boston socialite who had passed away at age 94. Among the countless treasures in the Beacon Hill mansion, one photograph caught her attention, a formal wedding portrait displayed in an ornate silver frame on the library mantelpiece. The sepia-toned photograph depicted a bride and groom standing before an elaborate altar in what appeared to be a grand church. The bride, radiant in white silk and French lace, held a bouquet of roses. The groom, distinguished in his formal mourning coat, gazed lovingly at his new wife. Behind them, wedding guests filled the pews, their faces capturing the joy of the celebration. According to the inscription on the frame's back, the photograph commemorated the wedding of Catherine and Theodore Richmond on June 12, 1897, at Trinity Church in Boston. The image epitomized Victorian elegance and prosperity, representing one of Boston's most prominent families during the Gilded Age. Santos had evaluated thousands of period photographs throughout her career, but something about this wedding portrait felt unusual. The composition seemed perfectly balanced, yet there was an underlying tension she couldn't identify. The guests appeared appropriately festive, but one figure in the background drew her attention. Standing among the wedding attendees, partially obscured by the shadows between pews, was a man whose presence seemed somehow discordant with the celebration. Unlike the other guests, he wasn't looking toward the happy couple. Instead, his gaze was fixed on something outside the frame, his expression serious and alert. The man's positioning struck Santos as deliberate rather than accidental. He stood at the very edge of the photograph's composition, easily overlooked unless one examined the image carefully. His formal attire matched the other male guests, but his body language suggested he wasn't truly part of the celebration. Santos carefully removed the photograph from its frame, hoping to find additional information about the wedding or its participants. Research into the Richmond family revealed their prominent position in Boston's Gilded Age society. Theodore Richmond was heir to a shipping fortune built during the California Gold Rush, when his father transported goods and passengers between Boston and San Francisco. By 1897, Richmond Shipping operated one of the largest merchant fleets on the East Coast. Catherine Morrison. Richmond came from equally prestigious lineage. Her father, Judge Harrison Morrison, served on the Massachusetts Supreme Court and wielded considerable political influence throughout New England. The Morrison family owned extensive real estate holdings in Boston's Back Bay and maintained summer estates in Newport, Rhode Island. The 1897 wedding represented the union of two powerful Boston dynasties. Contemporary newspaper accounts described the event as the social occasion of the season, with over 300 guests attending the ceremony at Trinity Church, followed by an elaborate reception at the Richmond family mansion. Historical records showed that 1897 was a tumultuous year for American labor relations. Nationwide strikes affected multiple industries, including shipping and transportation. Boston experienced significant labor unrest, with dock workers demanding better working conditions and higher wages. The Richmond Shipping Company faced particular scrutiny due to its employment practices and working conditions aboard their vessels. Federal immigration records revealed increasing tensions regarding foreign workers entering American ports. New regulations required enhanced documentation and monitoring of immigrant passengers and crew members. Shipping companies like Richmond's faced growing pressure to comply with federal oversight while maintaining profitable operations. The Pinkerton Detective Agency, founded in 1850, had expanded its operations significantly by 1897. The agency provided security services, labor dispute resolution, and surveillance capabilities to wealthy industrialists facing worker organization efforts. Many prominent families, particularly those in shipping and manufacturing, employed Pinkerton agents to protect their business interests. These historical circumstances suggested that the Richmond wedding, despite its celebratory nature, occurred during a period of significant social and economic tension that might have required additional security measures. Dr. Rebecca Foster, a specialist in 19th century photography at Harvard University, examined the Richmond wedding portrait using advanced imaging techniques. Her analysis revealed several unusual characteristics that distinguish this photograph from typical Victorian wedding documentation. The image quality demonstrated exceptional technical proficiency for 1897. Most wedding photographs from this period suffered from lighting limitations and lengthy exposure times that often resulted in blurred subjects. However, the Richmond portrait showed remarkable clarity and detail, suggesting the photographer possessed superior equipment and expertise. Foster's examination revealed that the photograph was taken using a large format camera with multiple flash powder charges, an expensive and sophisticated setup rarely used for wedding photography in 1897. This equipment typically served commercial or documentary purposes rather than social occasions. The composition itself raised questions. Victorian wedding photographs, traditionally focused exclusively on the bride and groom, with family members arranged in formal poses nearby. The inclusion of numerous background guests was unusual, as was the photographer's decision to capture such a wide view of the church interior. Digital enhancement of the mysterious guest revealed additional details. The man appeared to be approximately 35–40 years old, wearing a well-tailored suit that matched contemporary fashion. However, his posture and positioning suggested professional training rather than social familiarity with the wedding party. Foster discovered that the photograph bore subtle watermarks indicating it was processed by Whitman and Associates, a Boston photography studio known for serving commercial and governmental clients rather than society families. The studio's records, preserved in the Boston Public Library archives, showed they specialized in documentary and surveillance photography. Most significantly, Foster's analysis revealed that the mysterious guest was holding what appeared to be a small leather portfolio. Unusual for a wedding attendee, but consistent with someone conducting official business. The technical sophistication and documentary style of the photograph suggested it served purposes beyond commemorating a family celebration, possibly documenting the event for security or legal reasons. Boston Public Library genealogical records provided detailed information about the Richmond Morrison wedding guest list. The 300 attendees represented Boston's most influential families, including prominent businessmen, politicians, and social leaders. However, comparing the guest list with the faces visible in the photograph revealed discrepancies that raised important questions. Church records from Trinity Church confirmed the wedding ceremony details, but included additional information not found in newspaper accounts. Reverend Samuel Adams, who officiated the ceremony, noted in his private journal that special arrangements had been requested for the wedding, including additional security personnel and restricted access to certain areas of the church. The investigation revealed that several unexpected guests attended the Richmond wedding who weren't included on the official invitation list. These individuals included representatives from federal agencies, shipping industry officials, and labor organization leaders, suggesting the event attracted attention beyond its social significance. Harbor master records from Boston's commercial wharf showed unusual activity during the week of the Richmond wedding. Several Richmond shipping vessels had arrived ahead of schedule, and federal customs inspectors had conducted unscheduled inspections of cargo and crew documentation. Contemporary Boston newspaper archives revealed growing tensions between shipping companies and labor organizations during June 1897. The Boston Herald reported that dock workers were planning coordinated strikes against multiple shipping lines, including Richmond Shipping, demanding recognition of their union and improved working conditions. Federal immigration records indicated that Richmond Shipping faced investigation regarding its transportation of immigrant workers and compliance with new federal regulations. The company had been cited for documentation irregularities and questioned about its crew hiring practices. The mysterious guest's presence began to make sense within this context of labor disputes and federal oversight. His positioning in the photograph, alert and observant rather than celebratory, suggested he was monitoring the event for professional rather than social reasons. Cross-referencing the guest with federal employee records from 1897 would require accessing National Archives collections that might contain personnel information from the period. Federal records from the National Archives revealed that Richmond Shipping was under active investigation by the newly formed Bureau of Immigration during spring and summer 1897. The company faced allegations of transporting undocumented workers and violating federal regulations governing immigrant passenger manifests. The investigation centered on Richmond Shipping's practice of hiring foreign crew members at below-market wages and housing them in substandard conditions aboard company vessels. Federal inspectors had documented numerous violations of maritime labor laws and immigration requirements during surprise inspections of Richmond ships. Labor Department records showed that dock workers' unions had filed formal complaints against Richmond Shipping, alleging the company used immigrant workers to depress wages for American employees. Union organizers claimed Richmond deliberately recruited foreign workers who would accept dangerous working conditions and low pay. The timing of the Richmond wedding coincided with escalating tensions between the company and federal investigators. Bureau of Immigration Director William Williams had assigned special agents to monitor Richmond Shipping's operations and document evidence of regulatory violations. Agent Thomas Mitchell, a federal investigator specializing in maritime labor violations, was assigned to the Richmond case in May 1897. Mitchell's personnel file, declassified in 1967, showed he was authorized to conduct surveillance of company officials and document their activities during the investigation period. Mitchell's assignment included monitoring social events attended by Richmond family members, as these occasions often provided opportunities to observe interactions between company officials and potentially compromising associates. Federal investigators believed such events might reveal evidence of organized efforts to circumvent immigration and labor regulations. The wedding represented a particularly significant surveillance opportunity, as virtually all of Boston's shipping industry leadership would be present. Mitchell's observations could document relationships between Richmond Shipping and other companies potentially involved in similar violations. Contemporary reports showed that federal investigations into shipping industry practices intensified throughout 1897, culminating in major regulatory reforms and criminal prosecutions. The Richmond wedding occurred at the peak of this federal scrutiny. Research into the Pinkerton Detective Agency's 1897 operations revealed extensive involvement in labor disputes affecting Boston's shipping industry. The agency had been contracted by multiple shipping companies, including Richmond Shipping, to provide security services and monitor union organizing activities among dock workers. Pinkerton archives, now housed at the Library of Congress, contained detailed reports about surveillance operations conducted during the Richmond family wedding. The agency assigned Operative James Crawford to monitor the event, specifically watching for potential union infiltrators or agitators who might attempt to disrupt the celebration. Crawford's reports described the wedding as a gathering of significant commercial and political interests requiring protective observation. The Pinkerton operative noted the presence of federal investigators and expressed concern about potential conflicts between private security and government surveillance operations. The mysterious guest in the wedding photograph matched Crawford's physical description perfectly. Pinkerton records showed Crawford was 38 years old in 1897, stood approximately 6 feet tall, and typically wore dark formal attire when conducting surveillance operations at social events. Crawford's assignment included documenting attendees who might pose security risks to the Richmond family or their business interests. His positioning in the church allowed him to observe both the ceremony and the congregation while maintaining a low profile among the legitimate wedding guests. Pinkerton agency correspondence revealed coordination with Richmond Shipping Management regarding security arrangements for the wedding. The company had specifically requested surveillance of federal agents they suspected would attend the event, hoping to gather intelligence about the ongoing immigration investigation. The dual surveillance situation, Federal Agent Thomas Mitchell monitoring the Richmond family while Pinkerton operative James Crawford watched for potential threats, created a complex dynamic during the wedding ceremony. Both men were conducting professional surveillance while attempting to blend in with the social celebration. Crawford's post-event report noted the presence of federal interest in the wedding, but made no mention of direct contact with government agents. The Pinkerton operative successfully completed his assignment without compromising either investigation. Bureau of Immigration records revealed that Agent Thomas Mitchell's surveillance of the Richmond wedding yielded crucial evidence for the federal investigation. Mitchell's detailed observations documented conversations between shipping industry executives that suggested coordinated efforts to circumvent immigration regulations. Mitchell's report noted that Richmond Shipping's Theodore Richmond had been observed discussing crew arrangements with representatives from 3 other major shipping lines during the wedding reception. These conversations implied industry-wide practices of hiring undocumented foreign workers to reduce labor costs. The federal investigation expanded following Mitchell's wedding surveillance. Additional agents were assigned to monitor shipping company operations, and surprise inspections of vessels increased dramatically throughout summer 1897. The Bureau of Immigration coordinated with customs officials to enhance oversight of crew, documentation, and passenger manifests. Richmond Shipping's response to increased federal scrutiny revealed the company's awareness of the investigation's serious nature. Internal company correspondence, discovered during federal raids in August 1897, showed that Theodore Richmond had consulted with attorneys and hired additional Pinkerton security immediately following his wedding. The investigation uncovered evidence that Richmond Shipping had been systematically falsifying immigration documents for foreign crew members. The company created fraudulent papers allowing undocumented workers to enter American ports without proper visas or work permits. Federal agents documented that Richmond Shipping transported over 200 undocumented workers between 1895 and 1897, collecting fees from the workers while paying them below minimum wages. The operation generated substantial profits while violating multiple federal laws. Mitchell's wedding surveillance provided crucial evidence about the scope of industry involvement in these illegal practices. His observations of conversations between shipping executives suggested conspiracy charges might be appropriate for multiple companies and individuals. The Bureau of Immigration prepared arrest warrants for Theodore Richmond and several other shipping industry leaders based on evidence gathered during the months-long investigation. The wedding photograph, capturing Mitchell's presence at a key moment in the investigation, would become important documentation of federal law enforcement activities. On August 15, 1897, federal agents conducted coordinated raids across Boston, arresting Theodore Richmond and 6 other shipping industry executives on charges of conspiracy to violate federal immigration laws. The raids culminated months of investigation that began with surveillance of the Richmond wedding. Theodore Richmond was arrested at his Beacon Hill mansion as federal agents searched the property for additional evidence. The raid uncovered extensive documentation of the company's illegal practices, including falsified immigration papers, altered crew manifests, and correspondence detailing payments to foreign workers. Catherine Richmond, the new bride, was not charged with any crimes as investigators determined she had no knowledge of her husband's illegal business activities. However, the scandal devastated the family's social standing and threatened their substantial financial assets. The federal trials began in October 1897, attracting significant media attention throughout New England. Newspapers described the proceedings as exposing widespread corruption in Boston's maritime industry and highlighting the need for stronger federal oversight of immigration practices. Agent Thomas Mitchell testified extensively about his investigation, including his surveillance of the Richmond wedding. The wedding photograph was introduced as evidence, with Mitchell identifying himself as the mysterious guest who had been monitoring the event for federal purposes. Mitchell's testimony revealed that the shipping industry conspiracy involved systematic violation of federal laws over multiple years. Companies had coordinated their illegal practices, sharing information about evading federal inspections and maintaining fraudulent documentation. The trials resulted in significant convictions. Theodore Richmond received a 5-year federal prison sentence and substantial fines that nearly bankrupted Richmond Shipping. Other executives received similar penalties, effectively dismantling the conspiracy that had exploited immigrant workers. Pinkerton operative James Crawford also testified, describing his security surveillance during the wedding. His testimony revealed the complex dynamics between private security and federal investigation, highlighting how wealthy families attempted to protect themselves from legal consequences. The Richmond family never recovered from the scandal. Catherine Richmond was forced to sell their Beacon Hill mansion and most family assets to pay legal fees and federal fines. The couple divorced in 1899, and Catherine resumed using her maiden name. Following Theodore Richmond's conviction and imprisonment, The Richmond Shipping Company collapsed under the weight of federal fines, legal costs, and damaged reputation. The company's fleet was sold to satisfy court judgments, ending a maritime dynasty that had dominated Boston shipping for over 40 years. Catherine Morrison Richmond faced social ostracism from Boston's elite society despite her innocence regarding her husband's crimes. The scandal made her a pariah among families who had previously welcomed her into their social circles. She relocated to New York City, seeking anonymity and a fresh start away from Boston's judgmental society. The Richmond family's downfall became a cautionary tale about the consequences of prioritizing profits over legal compliance. Contemporary newspapers used the case to advocate for stronger federal oversight of immigration and labor practices in American industries. Agent Thomas Mitchell's successful investigation earned him promotion within the Bureau of Immigration. He continued investigating maritime labor violations throughout the early 1900s, using techniques developed during the Richmond case to expose similar conspiracies in other American ports. The federal investigation had broader implications for immigration enforcement. The Richmond case demonstrated the effectiveness of sustained surveillance and documentation in building conspiracy cases against organized criminal enterprises. Pinkerton Detective Agency's involvement in the case highlighted the complex relationships between private security and law enforcement. The agency faced criticism for helping wealthy clients evade federal scrutiny while simultaneously cooperating with government investigations. The wedding photograph became a symbol of how criminal activity could hide behind respectable social facades. Legal scholars would later cite the Richmond case as an early example of white-collar crime prosecution and the importance of federal oversight in protecting vulnerable workers. Labor organizations used the Richmond case to advocate for stronger worker protection laws and federal enforcement of immigration regulations. The scandal provided evidence that wealthy employers were systematically exploiting foreign workers while undermining American workers' wages and working conditions. The mysterious guest in the wedding photograph had helped expose a criminal conspiracy that exploited immigrant workers and violated federal laws, demonstrating how historical photographs can preserve evidence of forgotten justice. The discovery and investigation of the 1897 Richmond wedding photograph revealed a forgotten chapter of American immigration history and labor rights enforcement. What appeared to be a harmless society wedding had actually captured a federal agent conducting surveillance during a major criminal investigation. Agent Thomas Mitchell's presence in the photograph provided tangible evidence of early federal efforts to protect immigrant workers from exploitation and enforce immigration laws against powerful business interests. His surveillance work represented pioneering law enforcement techniques that would become standard practice in white-collar crime investigations. The photograph's journey from a family keepsake to historical evidence demonstrated how seemingly ordinary artifacts can preserve important stories about social justice and federal law enforcement. The image had quietly documented a moment when government agents risked their careers to protect vulnerable workers from wealthy exploiters. Maria Santos donated the photograph and her research to the Immigration History Research Center at the University of Minnesota, where it became part of a permanent collection documenting federal immigration enforcement during the Gilded Age. Harvard University's Dr. Rebecca Foster published a scholarly article about the photograph in the Journal of American History, describing it as a rare visual document of federal surveillance operations protecting immigrant workers during the 1890s. The Richmond case influenced immigration law development throughout the early 20th century. Legal precedents established during Theodore Richmond's prosecution were cited in subsequent cases involving employer exploitation of foreign workers, demonstrating the lasting impact of Agent Mitchell's investigation. Modern immigration advocates have referenced the Richmond case when arguing for stronger federal enforcement of worker protection laws. The case demonstrates that employer exploitation of immigrant workers is a persistent problem requiring sustained government oversight and enforcement. The wedding photograph now serves as a powerful reminder that justice sometimes works quietly, behind the scenes, with dedicated federal agents protecting vulnerable people from powerful interests. Agent Mitchell's presence in the shadows represented the federal government's commitment to enforcing laws protecting all workers, regardless of their immigration status. The truth about the mysterious guest transformed a society wedding photograph into a symbol of American justice and the ongoing struggle to protect worker rights against exploitation by wealthy and powerful employers.